We bought the Taproot filly out of Tisn't She Beautiful and will be trained by Todd Pletcher. Extremely athletic, a lot like him. We're excited to see him on the track.
Beautiful filly. She's out of a graded stakes mare that ran early as a 2-year-old, so I like that quite a bit out of her. This filly looks like she's going to be super early and precocious. Very good muscled filly, just a lot to like about her.
Taproot, standing at Gainesway.
Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer. 3 major Kentucky Derby prep races coast to coast this weekend, and the DRF race of the day is the Grade 1 $1 million Bluegrass. This is at Keeneland, race number 9. 1.1 1/8 is the distance. Our coverage is presented by Gainesway. Let's take a look at this field, and remember to download those free Formulator past performances for this race. You can find them on the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com. Access them, handicap along with us. Of course, Keeneland Spring Meet features 2-year-old racing. Gainesway's Taproot sends out his first 2-year-olds in 2022. It's a big field, Mike. Zanden, Smile Happy. They exit the Risen Star, won by the current Kentucky Derby favorite, Epicenter, and both were compromised by the way that race was run.
Yeah, overall, I thought they both ran, really well in that race, Dan. They had to, settle for placings behind that really nice winner, their Epicenter, but they both ran well. You can sort of expect them perhaps to improve a little bit here in their second starts back. They're, the 2 horses to beat here shipping it.
I'm really interested in your take on the pace of this race. We throw up the Timeform US pace projector. They have this a red bar fast pace scenario. I look over the past performances, and while yes, it's a big field for $1 million, and you'd think maybe they'd go early, I don't see any true blazers.
Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, we'll see. It is a big field, so perhaps, with a bunch of horses leaving for position, things will get heated up a little bit in the early stages. But you're right, Dan. There's not, there aren't a ton of fast early horses in here. We'll see how it all plays out.
The number 1 is Command Performance, and trainer Todd Pletcher really tested this horse as a 2-year-old. As a second race maiden, they ran him in the Champagne. He just happened to catch a freak in Jack Christopher. He ran a good second. He then ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as a third race maiden. He ran okay that day. I think a lot of folks were expecting him to be a maiden no longer in his seasonal debut at Tampa Bay Downs, and well, he underperformed that day.
Yeah, he really did. You sort of expect those Pletcher horses to come back off of layoffs and just, sort of run their race, Dan. Didn't happen for Command Performance. He was very heavily favored. Listen, he got wired that day. He was wide around the racetrack. So I suppose if you wanted to sort of dress up his performance somehow, perhaps you could. Ultimately, he just didn't really run a very good race that day. And he also got very tired at the end of that race.
It's not like Pletcher's given up on him, however. He's running him as a maiden for $1 million, and he drew an inside post where he could save some ground. Now, the horse that wired Command Performance is right next door. That's the number 2 Fenwick, and we're going to watch Fenwick's maiden win over Command Performance on March the 12th. Got right to the lead that day at a big price. Maybe the blinkers just added speed, added focus, and got this horse to live up to his potential. He is a son of Curlin, and he beat Command Performance handily.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty nice looking performance. It's also worth pointing out that, behind Command Performance, this really wasn't much of a field. And Fenwick just managed to get absolutely loose on the lead in here, Dan. Obviously took a big step forward in that race, going to have to take another step forward to be competitive with this field. But, I'm just going to assume with blinkers on now for the second time, they're just going to try to use his speed again, go forward.
That's just what I was going to ask you, whether you feel Paco Lopez should be aggressive with this horse. You answered in the affirmative before I could ask, and I agree. I think Fenwick has to be sent from the gate. Trademark showed speed as a 2-year-old at Churchill Downs. Now, he's raced twice at Tampa Bay at 3. He just didn't have the speed of Command Performance, who dominated the Tampa Bay 3-year-old races this winter. In the Tampa Bay Derby, I couldn't see much of an excuse. They're going to try to stretch him out to 1.1 1/8, and he's got to take a step forward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to say he'll run better this time because maybe he can actually make the lead this time. Classic Culture was just faster than him in both the Davis and the Tampa Bay Derby, so he couldn't get to the lead in those races. He wasn't competitive at all off the layoff. He ran a little better last time, but I didn't see his real excuse there. The 2 wins last year, the first time they stretched him out, Dan, at Churchill, he did manage to wire those fields, but man, those were really slow paces. Even if they don't go fast in here, they're not going to go that slow.
Zanden, the number 4, has only raced 3 times, but perhaps what he has going for him, despite his lack of racetrack experience, is that when he's made it to the track, he's raced twice at 1 mile and an eighth already, a really good effort and only his second lifetime start in the Grade 2 Remsen, and then his seasonal debut in the Risen Star, a race in which you could argue he lost all chance at the start. He hopped right up at the air, he was last going into the first turn, he was well back turning into the stretch, and all in all, he finished okay to be third, maybe flattened out just a bit late.
Yeah, plenty of excuses for him in that race, though, Dan. You're right. He didn't break that sharply from the gate. I thought he was a little bit keen. The first run through the stretch there, maybe wanted to get going a little bit. Jose Ortiz wanted to take a hold of him. They rated for a long way. He was wide on the second turn. All in all, I thought he ran pretty well off the layoff last time in a tougher race than this one, it feels like. And as you've already mentioned, his Remsen was really good. He got first run on Mo Donegal that day, and Mo Donegal came and got him. But this horse showed no quit in the stretcher. That was a really nice performance.
Mark Hasse sends out the 5 Volcanic, and this is a horse that was a maiden winner in his seasonal debut at Gulfstream, going a 1-turn mile. He showed some speed in that race. Drew post 7 in the Sam F. Davis, maybe outdrawn by Classic Causeway, who had speed from an inner post position, and Volcanic sat off the pace. All in all, he did okay. Let's watch the Sam F. Davis. Volcanic was going to rally for third behind Classic Causeway, who of course would come back to win the Tampa Bay Derby, but then bomb last week in the Florida Derby. Do you think this sort of new running style from Volcanic, it's not totally new, he showed that he could run from off the pace last year, is going to help him down the road? Because this was a pretty good performance.
Yeah, it's only going to help him down the road if he can, find a better finish than he found there in the Sam F. Davis, Dan. I mean, they sat a little bit with him. He did get wired in there. We just saw when we picked up the replay there in the upper stretch. He had dead aim on at least second in that spot. And he just didn't finish that hard. He got run down from behind for second. He ran fine. He has to run a lot better than that against this field.
Emmanuel's very interesting for Todd Pletcher because he won his first 2 starts on the engine. They ran him in the Fountain of Youth against Simplification, who came back to run a good third in the Florida Derby with a 92 buyer. He's on his way to Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby. Well, your thoughts on Emmanuel's Fountain of Youth? It looked like he tried to get into the race on the backstretch, maybe flattened out just a bit. All in all, in his third lifetime start, it was promising enough that you could project improvement.
I thought he ran well on the Fountain of Youth. I don't know that I love the Fountain of Youth as a race overall. I thought this horse ran really well in there, considering, it's just his third start bumping up in class. This horse got bumped at the start. He was in traffic early, so he really couldn't get forward when Saez wanted to get forward with him. And he just wound up basically hung out to dry in that race, Dan. He was a good, maybe 5 wide all the way around the track in there. I thought that was a pretty good performance, and I really liked his first 2 efforts as well. He's a major player in here.
If you're Luis Saez, you look at the PPs, you saw that he's been on the lead in his first 2 starts, albeit with fractions much slower than he's likely to see on Saturday at Keeneland. Would you try to get him out of the gate, break running, and get a forward position?
Yeah, I'd be thinking I'm going to go to the lead in this race. If somebody else really wants it, I guess you could, try to take a hold. But my plan would be to make the lead into the first turn.
A horse that's hoping that the pace is fast, a la the Timeform US pace projector, is the 7, Golden Glider, a horse that chased Classic Causeway in vain in both the Sam F. Davis and the Tampa Bay Derby. Maybe a fast pace helps his finish a little bit. It looked like he was passing some tired horses at the end last time.
Yeah, he was, and he just missed second and third at the end there. That wasn't, the Tampa Bay Derby wasn't a great race overall, but this horse ran fine in there. I feel like he's sort of coming along slowly. He still hasn't run a fast race yet, and that's going to be a real problem for him, especially against horses like this. But I could see using this horse underneath somewhere at a big price.
Mr. Lucas's filly's Secret Oaths Kentucky Derby dreams were dashed when she was beaten in the Arkansas Derby. She'll still be a major player in the Kentucky Oaks, but the legendary Hall of Fame trainer still has the 8, Ethereal Road, who looked really good 2 starts back in a maiden special weight where he just had a horrible start. Must have been 30 lengths out of it and still ran by all of them to win by 4. And the Rebel, he ran a nice race. Let's watch that performance right now. He made an early move to make the lead turning into the stretch, and he just got a little bit tired at the end, Mike. He still finished ahead of Barber Road, who came back to run second in the Arkansas Derby with an 88 Beyer speed figure. I wouldn't be surprised if this horse gives a good effort stretching out to 1 1/8. How do you feel about him at this extra distance?
Yeah, I think I'll side with you a little bit on this. I don't care about the extra distance. I think it's fine for him. You know, I guess we'll see if he can improve again. Like you, I thought his maiden win was pretty nice because he got off to a really bad start there. He did have a big pace in front of him, and he came and he rolled it over in the stretch. Dan, I just didn't really like the Rebel as a race overall, and I'm not giving this horse, any big excuse in that race. I know that he was wide, and the winner Uno rode the rail the entire way, but to me, if this horse was really good, he would have won that race, and he just wasn't quite good enough to get it done. I'm not saying he can't improve here. I'm sure that he can. I just don't really want to bet him in here.
I think the Rats are jumping off the ship with a 9 Rattle and Roll, and I think they might be making a little bit of a mistake. This is a horse that ran so well at Keeneland in the Breeders' Futurity last year that he was really on my short list for the Kentucky Derby over the winter. Now, it took him some time to get back to the races. He didn't run well in the Fountain of Youth. He didn't necessarily run well in the Louisiana Derby, although I think he did better. I'm fascinated by the addition of blinkers here. And getting back to Keeneland, I think if this pace is fast, you're going to hear from Rattle and Roll at a price in the stretch.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with you. My conviction's starting to waver. Like you, I was a big fan of his as a 2-year-old. I was dying to bet this horse in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and he didn't make that race. Listen, I'm happy to give him a little bit of an excuse for the Fountain of Youth off the layoff on that track, trying to close. All right, I'll give him a little bit of an excuse. He didn't run great that day. Did he have things working against him last time? I think he did, Dan. There was no pace really going on in that race, and nobody really closed. He still didn't really do that much running. I don't know. I'm starting to lose my faith in him a little bit. I'm not sure that I love the equipment change for him either, but I don't want to totally give up on him yet. He's 8-1 on the morning line. That's not for me. And then I would want, but he does have to use it.
Smile Happy, his stablemate, is up next. He's in post position 10, and he started his career with a big victory at Keeneland. And then he followed that race up by winning the Kentucky Jockey Club, which in my opinion was the strongest 2-year-old sort of prep race for the Kentucky Derby. I mean, he beat Classic Causeway, he beat White Barrio, he just beat nice horses in that field. The Risen Star we talked about, it was a race where not a lot of pace. This horse was sort of in and among horses near the back of the pack, and he fired at the end of that race in a race that produced a couple of next out winners. Of course, Epicenter came back to win the Louisiana Derby with a 102 Beyer. This horse is just a major player.
Yeah, he is. He's the morning line favorite, I think deservedly so in this race, Dan. Ran really well in both of his starts as a 2-year-old. Not only were they relatively fast, they were very visually impressive wins. I thought he ran great in the Risen Star. And when you go back and watch the replay, it's almost like Lanerie might have been under instructions there to give this horse a race off the layoff. I mean, he took this horse back from the start, and he didn't do anything with this horse. Even around the second turn when Zanden, sort of went to the outside and actually made a run, Lanerie just sat on the inside, didn't even try to get this horse into the race. And then he came through between horses 2 different times before he got up for second there at the end. I thought he ran great off the layoff.
Blackadder has winning experience at 1 1/8, the number 11, who will make his first start for Rudolph Brissett. Let's watch his race in the El Camino Real Derby. Now, again, remember, this race is over the Chiquita synthetic surface at Golden Gate Fields. He got a very fast pace in this race. He got the right closer's trip where he's going to be able to split horses with no impediment in his path. And I really think the trip made the difference as he beat a couple of next out winners.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the trip made all the difference here. He is running down a really nice horse in McKinnon in this race, but McKinnon's more of a turf kind of a horse. I don't know. He ran fine in that race. If you like him at some kind of big price in here and think the distance is the key for this horse, have at it. I think he really is going to be a good price in here, but I think this might be a little too tough for him.
Completing the field is the 12 Grantham, and he really took the worst of it from the post position standpoint on the far outside in this two-turn event. He raced on wet tracks in his last 2 races. He did okay in the withers. He was relatively close to a very fast pace, and it's not like there was a lot of quitting him in the stretch. And in the Tampa Bay Derby, a race we're going to show you right now, he easily outran his 37-1 odds. He got up close to Classic Causeway. He saved ground, and he held second, but this is a race that featured just no closing.
Exactly. I mean, this was the kind of race where, considering the trip that he got, you know, if you were going to take this horse to pull off an upset at a big price in one of these prep races, this was probably going to be the one, Dan. He sat right up close. He had plenty of room on the rail, and he's just really no match for Classic Causeway at the end. He just holds on for second. He ran fine. I think this horse is actually okay, but this is not a great post, and I didn't want to bet him back in here.
There are some very talented horses in this year's Bluegrass, and I have a feeling it might be a super important prep for the Kentucky Derby. Let's take a look at our top selections. Mike, we're looking at your top picks right now. Smile Happy, in my opinion, is the horse to beat. I have to use him. You picked my top pick third. I picked your top pick third, but I got to use him in any kind of multiple race wagers.
Yeah, I just wanted to split the 2 favorites with Emmanuel, who I almost put on top. Then I think he's going to run a lot better in here, and I'm worried that Saez is going to put this horse on the lead and be tough to run down. I really like Smile Happy. I think he's the horse to beat. I'll take him. I'm going to use a lot of Emmanuel with him.
I have the same strategy as you. Let's split the chalks and try to find value in the exacta or trifecta, hoping Rattle and Roll just likes the home cooking at Keeneland and can run back to his breeder's futurity in his 3rd start off the layoff. Smile Happy for Mike, Zanden for me, coming in from the fairgrounds. 10-6-4-9 for Mike, 4-9-10-2 for me. It's the Bluegrass. It's the race of the day on Saturday. It's presented by Gainesway.